Alright, so in this video we're going to be looking at some of the behind the scenes stuff in the pod racing highlight animation I uploaded a little while ago. You guys really respond well to the last BTS I did, so I figured I might as well start making one for all the highlight animations. And before I get started, I want to say I'm using Autodesk Maya. I get this question asked so many times. I responded to it, I feel like a million times. The software I use is called Autodesk Maya. So now that that's out of the way, let's start. The terrain in the video they're on similar to what's super flat terrain. So instead of exporting to the whole chunk of terrain, I actually just made the terrain by hand with individual blocks and stuff, because it ends up with a bit cleaner scene, and it really takes. It's actually probably is faster to do this than to make it in Minecraft and actually export it. So instead of having a bunch of blocks to make up the ground, it's just two planes. There's one big plane here, which is not dense at all, and then there's a little bit more dense one as we get closer to the track. And that way I can just select these faces, and select the faces if I need to, and just delete them, so I can replace them with actual blocks if I need to, which is the case when the pod racers hit into the ground. I have individual blocks there. So that's the terrain, and then the track and everything is all individual blocks. The pod racers here, the overall shape and design is similar to the ones that are in the actual video, but you can see I kind of changed it up a little bit. The blocks, first off, are much smaller. They're all scaled down on the racers. So if you look at the wireframe of the ground plane, we can see one block is a lot bigger than the blocks on the pod racers, and that's just because if I were to make them exactly how they appear in the actual video, they would have been too big and bulky. So I kind of stuck with the same overall shape, but just kind of scaled things around a little bit. Replaced the base with more of like a bars frame type of thing, and also they're pedal carts instead of actual whatever motor they're powered by, or they're supposed to be powered by. There are still the motors with the particles coming out the back, but I don't know, they have them pedaling. I just thought that'd make it a little bit better, since they're going all slow and stuff. So yeah, all the lower body and pedaling is controlled by one control. So just selecting these circles that are out in front of the carts, I can really only have to animate this one control to do the whole bottom half of the character. So rotating this will make the pedals turn, have the feet move appropriately with the pedals, but without rotating with them. So you can see that. There's also an expression which drives the character to bounce up and down. So you can see as I rotate this, he's moving up and down. And there's also an expression driving the rotate of this subroot control. If I can, actually I should probably reference this as well. All right, so there's this kind of subroot control. I have it named the pelvis control, but it's basically a controller that does the same thing as the root controller, but it only influences the root bone. So we can do that kind of stuff, whereas the root moves everything underneath it. So that controller, we can see the rotate Z is purple, indicating that there is an expression driving it. So as I rotate this, like as I mentioned, he goes up and down. So if I grab this controller here, we can see the Y translate is driven by an expression, and this pelvis rotate Z is also controlled by an expression. So he automatically will kind of bob and twist with the pedaling. So that saved a huge amount of time. That's kind of a little example of a few simple expressions saving a ton of time animating. And the same thing goes with Sparklez pod racer here. So I have them hidden for the sake of playback, but we can see we have the smoke particles here that come out. You can see the playback gets a little bit slow once those are introduced, but those are just simple legacy particles in a cloud shape with kind of a gray shader and a little bit of noise to them. Those are pretty simple. So yeah, they go ahead and start trotting forward, doing their thing. We can see the actual path they take through the track. It's jumping around a lot. And I did my best to hide it, but if I go ahead and reveal the particles again, wherever they jump, there's particles left behind. So we can see these particles are born over back here, but as they jump from one place to another, they're kind of left behind there, which I don't think is too noticeable in the actual video. But yeah, so they're crashing into each other. Let me hide these again. Going around the track. And initially I was gonna have them travel through using motion paths, or I think that's what they're called, motion paths. But that would have been a little bit harder to kind of have them look more like they're floating, since a motion path, it's going to follow it exactly, rotate with it exactly. So it almost would be more of like a roller coaster type look. And obviously they're hovering, so they need to be more like hovery, I guess, looking. So I went ahead and just animated them by hand to move around here. So yeah, going pretty slow. Around drifting and stuff. Like doing this with a motion path would have been, it would have been possible, of course, but it just would have been a little bit extra work rather than just doing it by hand. And actually at first when I was animating these, I really wasn't getting the results I wanted to. It looks really rigid. And I guess, let me get to this spot here. Just when they were hitting into, whoa, what did I do? When they were hitting into stuff, it just looked really rigidy, but after going through and animating them to like kind of react when they get hit into stuff, so if I go ahead and just hide him, let me hide the curves too, there. It doesn't really look all that good, it just kind of looks like crappy, but when you add in that the character kind of moving with it, it really makes it more believable. So showing, I've kind of, I mean, I was always aware of this, but really showing reactions to things, this really made it apparent that that has a large influence over the look, making it look believable, I guess. I feel like I'm kind of just babbling, but yeah. So yeah, he goes in, impacts the ground. Here's what I was talking about with having the individual blocks, being able to animate those versus the not being able to do that if it was a solid plane like this. But yeah, he comes by, and he has his impact, drives around, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I only really had to animate the upper body for this, and then this single controller, which this was animated, this didn't take long at all to animate actually. Most of the time was spent into this explosion, which is what I'll get into next. And I actually have fluids disabled because, let me go ahead and enable those. For some reason, the explosion wasn't reading from the cache, so playback's gonna be kind of slow. But yeah, the explosion, that came about. So there was I saw a flash outside my window, and I kind of walked up to it. And as I walked up, the window exploded. And as I'm recovering from all the glass on my face, there's Michael Bay standing there in the windowsill, holding his hand out with a flash drive in it, and he hands it to me and then just leaves. I plug it into my computer and there's a single file on it. I import it into Maya, and lo and behold, it's this explosion. So that's how this happened. But no, in all seriousness, I started out with kind of a preset in Maya that results a pretty good explosion, doing most of the work for me. And from there, I just made tweaks and added to it as I liked. I cached it out, but for some reason it's not reading from the cache, which I think I just mentioned that. So it's playing back really slow. But yeah, there's the explosion, at least in real time here. Yeah, this was a huge problem on the renderer. I haven't really used this heavy of fluids before. And I learned that rendering out each frame of this explosion took a super long time. You might have, if you pay attention, the videos usually go up every day, Sunday at 5 p.m. or at least 5 East Coast. If you're on the East Coast, 5 p.m. But this one was a little bit later just because the rendering times on the explosion came out to be like 20 minutes at their highest. The first few frames were a few minutes, and as the explosion kind of evolves, the frames got longer and longer and longer. So I originally planned out for the animation to go to like somewhere around 550, where the explosion would have had time to kind of fade off. But for the sake of rendering time, because that would have been a whole another like, I don't know, 5 hours or something, I just had it cut off after a few frames of the explosion. Because usually I just use stock footage for explosions, like at the end of the death rep video. And it's kind of hard to tell because there's so much movement. But behind the brick wall, there's an explosion, but that's just stock footage of an explosion. In this instance, I wanted to use a genuine fluid explosion, but that was kind of a mistake. I mean, it came out pretty sweet looking, at least in my opinion, but it definitely was a costly render item. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, leave a comment or tweet at me or message me, whatever. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something, and thanks for watching.